Hello everybody, my name is Kate Russell, technology reporter, author and professional ferret mom, and today I am introducing you to Fantastic Books' MABLE session, massive autumn book launch event, and the topic under the microscope is the eco-thriller. In this genre, we've got some fantastic authors who are going to be reading for you. Stuart Aken is going to be reading from Generation Mars series, Blood Red Dust, War Over Dust, Return to Dust, and Excess of, I'm guessing, Dust. Linda Nicklin is going to be reading from Storm Girl, and we're going to be learning about Sue Knight's book, Waiting for Gordo. Tenuous links to ferrets? I know you want them. In the Storm Girl, the main character Angel is ferret-like in many ways. She is tenacious, resourceful and loyal, but has a surprisingly sharp bite when she needs it. Personality-wise, Daza in Generation Mars shares a great deal with ferrets. She's curious, she loves to explore and dives into anything that catches her interest with no thought to the consequences. Appy in An Excess of... is from the same stock as Daza from Generation Mars. Rebellious, curious, active and mischievous. So that's what's coming up. Are you ready? Are you sitting comfortably? And when this ferret has stopped mauling my neck, we'll begin.
This is the first chapter of Storm Girl by Linda Nicklin, read by Dan. Chapter 1. The sack over Angel's face smelled of old vomit, and her cheek was tender and sticky. Her shoulder was bruised, and her throat burned from thirst and stomach acid. The water that they had forced down her throat was doped. Just the thought of it made her retch. She had tried to fight them, but they just laughed and shoved her back in the locker. It fitted her like a coffin. She stretched her legs and braced her back hard against the side. Her naked feet pushed against rough wood. Her muscles ached from inactivity and unspent adrenaline, but she had to control her fear and focus. She had to be ready. Angel knew that she'd been stolen. Harvested. They hadn't touched her yet, but that would come. She calculated that they'd been on the move for 3 days. At first, they had travelled at night, but now she could tell from the bird song that it was daytime. The sense of tyres rolling and spitting over rough stones had given way to a sideways rise and fall of open water, and these were not the sounds of woodland birds. The screeching that she could hear reminded her of the winter gulls, scavengers and bringers of disease that moved inland from the sea when the weather turned cold. She took a deep breath and shifted the weight on her hip. She knew what she had to do. Her stepfather had taught her well. She reckoned that she had 1 day left at the most. She scanned her body. Parts were probably already traded. She was just an incubator for her organs. Her eggs would be the prize, farmed fast and traded. No tats, no pox, no scars. They would take her skin too. Why would they want me? She'd asked her stepfather when he told her the story. A girl in the tower was her favourite, but this was the one about the girl who ran away. Why not you? He'd asked softly. You know there's no rescue, right? She sighed at the space that he left for her reply. No, Daddy, nobody gets rescued. That's right. Always be safe. He spoke in a musical, fairy tale voice. Guard, hide, run, kill, or die. Angel concentrated hard as she uncurled a finger for each action. When he had finished, her little hand was spread out like a starfish, and her daddy had kissed her sticky palm. She breathed out, trying to calm herself with the memory of his safe, fresh air smell. She breathed in, instantly alert. Somebody was undoing the lock. Her heart pounded in her ears as she strained to listen. There was no chatter, no bustle, just the sound of the engine accelerating and the padlock being unhooked. Cold air touched her skin. Angel closed her eyes against the light. Rough hands pulled at her shoulder. "Get up," ordered a gravelly female voice. Angel felt the plastic ties on her wrist and ankles pinch and then snap off. "Stand up." They're definitely Reapers, she thought as she struggled to get out of the locker. I'm dead. The hood was ripped away. She blinked hard, then turned to look at the woman. She was short and thick-set, dressed in a stained boiler suit, waterproof apron and white Wellington boots. No funny stuff. You want to die right here? It can be arranged. She looked Angel up and down. Shame not to be a breeder, though. But no buts, she mocked. You should have been more careful. The woman clicked her tongue and shoved Angel away from the locker. What's happening? Her throat was raw. The woman grunted and pushed her toward the door. Move! The farm ship's waiting, said the woman, touching Angel's silver hair. Out you go. Angel stumbled into the glare of the afternoon sun. The air tasted of salt. She glanced around and saw a muddy channel etched between makeshift buoys tethered to the shadows of buildings that were submerged beneath dirty, foaming water. Lamppost heads bobbed in and out of the waves. Further away, the arc of a roller coaster swayed to and fro. She'd heard stories of whole cities that had been lost to the final tidal surge. They said that coastal sea routes were treacherous now, punctuated by church towers at high tide and trees and rooftops at low tide. The woman pushed her further along the cold, greasy deck. On the horizon, Angel could see white specks where gulls dipped and reeled in a line of soot-black smoke. In the pit of her stomach, Angel knew that each passing minute took her further away from land and closer to the gulls and the factory ship. She had to find a way to get off this boat. She shuffled forwards. Her legs trembled with the effort of moving. In front of her, there was a line of shivering people, wide-eyed and silent as they rose from sedation into a nightmare reality. A man in a white coat moved along the queue, holding a gun-shaped instrument in his hand. He scanned each person's arms. They've chipped me, Angel gasped. Behind him, a woman with a box of syringes snapped on a plastic glove. The one who had got her out of the crate pushed roughly past and disappeared below deck. From the size of the boat, Angel guessed that there were probably room for another 20 lockers. This was a good harvest. At the front of the queue, 2 men hosed down a naked and crying man. The girl in front turned around to look at Angel. Her hair was the colour of caramel and her skin was so pale that it seemed blue. She leaned towards Angel. I'm meat. You look good for a cycle of eggs. Her eyes are blank. She's already dead, Angel thought. What? Eyes too blue. They'll fog. You're lucky. They should let you keep them. Angel leaned in towards her. She could feel the girl's body heat on her shoulder. We have to escape. Jump. Jump now. 1, 2... No! They shoot, the girl hissed back. I can't swim that far. You have to. I can't. Try, said Angel, pushing her hard. The girl screamed as she slipped and stumbled across the deck. She missed the railing and fell flat into the sea. The others in the queue turned as if in a dream. The woman threw the syringes down and ran to the rail. Sensing a chance to escape, a man and 2 women jumped overboard. People began to scream. Angel crouched low and crossed to the other side, ducked under the rail and slipped silently into the water. Hoping that no one had noticed, she walked with her hands around to the back of the slowing boat where a red and white dinghy slapped in its wake. The propeller stopped and it drifted towards her. On the far side, she could hear shouts and screams over the crack of gunfire. She edged along, glanced around the hull and caught a glimpse of a girl treading water and hiding close to the side of the boat. There was the noise of fighting, and then 2 more people jumped into the sea over Angel's head. She had to go before she was seen. Weightless, Angel took a deep breath and slipped under the water. The pulse of the idling engine thrummed against her chest. She grabbed hold of the rope and pulled hard. The dinghy resisted and then slid towards her. She looped it around the stationary propeller, then kicked hard and struck out for land. Water was her element. She had swum in the lakes as a child. She used to listen to the water, feel the flow with her hair, lie under the surface and watch birds fly overhead. She could find the energy of the lake and let it take her. She surfaced behind the crest of a wave, took a breath, then dived back under. Her heart pounded in her ears. She checked her stroke rhythm, searched for calm in her adrenaline-fueled brain, then swam for her life. The water fluttered between her fingers. A surge of cold pushed her forward. The tide had turned. 9 lung-burning strokes later, she rose and gasped for air. She felt a splat as a bullet hit the water close by. Shrill voices shouted in alarm. She heard a loud splash, glanced back and saw that a man had just dived into the water. A woman was directing him towards her. He kicked off in a thrashing, twisting stroke, inefficient but strong. She took another breath, pulled herself underwater and swam for the town. She needed to get away fast. The tide was bringing him towards her. 2 sets of binoculars watched from one of the ragged houses on the edge of the town. Impressive, wouldn't you say, Mary? Depends on what you call impressive, Jim. 1 dead, some still in the water, 1 swimming our way. Where? Oh, yes, the Reaper's chasing her. No style, but he's got power, Jim whispered. She's there, breathing between the waves. Good girl. Mary leaned forward to get a better view. Jim checked the boat. Black smoke lay low on the water. They haven't realised the propeller's snagged. They're burning the motor out. Not very bright. Where is she now? Heading for the old town, away from the channel. Come on. I better get ready for what the tide brings in. Jim stood up. Got your knife? He tapped his pocket and nodded, picked up a cloth bag, felt for his torch and slipped the strap of his binoculars over his head. Mary watched him square his shoulders, pull his collar up and step out into the light. Come back safe, she whispered after the door had closed. Angel had reached the edge of the town. She could feel the pull of the undertow between the buildings. Swimming in the old lakes at home could be cold and dangerous, but this was a restless, deceptive sea. She could see glass-smooth water where it raced over the ridge and slopes of rooftops, but it churned and rolled in the angles of the buildings. She had to fight against being dragged into the rush between the walls. Checking back, she saw the splash of the Reaper about 50 strokes behind. He's strong. She kicked and dived under the surface. Through a tangle of dead branches, she could see the silted rectangular shape of a garden fence. She moved closer and saw the flap of a shed roof opening and closing like an envelope in the swell. A carefully timed kick got her through the gap and into the shed. Desperately, she searched for a weapon in a tangled pile of metal and debris. The roof opened and let in more light. She saw a board on the wall holding rusted, silt-covered tools. Angel snatched at the hammer and screwdriver. Their clasps disintegrated into brown clouds around her hands. Above, she could see the dark shape of the swimmer. He was treading water, looking for her. She pushed hard against the shed roof and kicked with all of her strength. Legs pumping, she powered up through the water and drove the screwdriver into the Reaper's stomach. His flesh resisted for a second, then yielded. The blade sank deep into him. The cold water and his exhaustion dampened his reactions for a second, but then his body spasmed, just as Angel rose out of the water and brought the hammer down hard on the base of his skull. She settled his unconscious body face down in the water, and then, without pausing, turned and swam away from the widening pool of blood. Tidy, Mary whispered to herself. One to watch, that one. She tracked the Reaper's lifeless body as each wave carried him closer to the broken remains of the town. Then she turned her attention back to the distant swimmer. Now where has she gone? That was Chapter 1 of Storm Girl by Linda Nicklin, read by Dan.
Here is a short extract from Waiting for Gordo by Sue Knight. The book is set on a small tropical island in the Indian Ocean, where a group of divers are on holiday. At this point, we are 11 chapters into the book, and on the 4th day of the holiday. Jim is the holiday's organiser, Miranda is his wife, and Gordo is a fellow diver who is late because he missed his plane.
Gordo! She was not all alone at Shark Point, suddenly so dark and cold. Gordo had come to get her, his teeth gleaming as white as Carmen's in the black water, welcoming little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. And now he was reaching out to welcome her, reaching out and out and out. Why was he trying to pull her down? into those black depths? All his long, wavering green arms? Miranda sat up. Jim slept exhausted beside her. What time is it? She thought dazedly. 2:30? She could see Jim's travel alarm gleaming faintly in the dark, green like the wavering arms on the reef. Jim! What the? Startled, Jim sat up. Jim, I did see something on the reef, I did. What? Miranda, you're dreaming. No, Jim, truly, I did see it. It was green and wavering, and it wasn't till I saw it in this dream. And you told me. Blood underwater looks green. Green.
Hello, this is Stuart Aken and Linda Nicklin talking about the aspect of environment as it relates to our novels. Linda's going to give a quick sort of breakdown of hers first, and then I shall give you a breakdown of mine, and we will then just chat to each other. If you'd like to go ahead, Linda.
Okay, thank you. My book, Storm Girl, is based around a character called Angel, who's walked into a trap and been harvested by a gang of reapers working for the rich elite who exploit every resource of the planet for their own gratification, and that includes the people. With disease rife and continents largely drowned by rising sea levels, society has broken down for those struggling to live on what land remains. Angel's only hope of escape is through the treacherous waters of a submerged city, from which the depths of her despair, she finds a glimmer of hope and a resistance movement fighting back against the wholesale plundering of the planet. Over to you, Stuart. You want to talk about yours?
My book is called An Excess Of, for a very good reason, because we are excess in everything that we do as humans. It is written in the first person from the point of view of Appy, who is called Appy because she couldn't pronounce her own name as a child, which was Abby, and she just became Appy. So I'll just read what it says on the back of the cover so you know what it's about. 6 random strangers escape drowning against the odds when their ship is wrecked, only to be stranded on a desert island hundreds of miles from civilization. Dangerously at odds on many fronts, they must work together to survive or risk violence and death in this entirely unfamiliar environment. Mutual attraction promises to make allies of 2, but can romance overcome the irrational beliefs of one and build a bond through the pragmatism of the other? Will the group be able to overcome prejudices, superstitions, and passionately held opinions to unite in action when they're presented with an opportunity to escape their isolation? Or will ancient beliefs and traditions, fears and uncertainties surface to place all in sudden peril as they prepare to risk everything in this unexpected chance to return to a world entirely changed during their absence?
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And one of the key things that came out for me, which is such a big thing for us here, is truth. What is the truth? And what's the difference between a belief and a strongly held opinion and the truth?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Something which is an unknown quality as far as our politicians appear to.
Well, most of society. I suspect that we never really knew what people believed until everybody was able to communicate it at the press of a button.
Absolutely.
And perhaps the world was always, people held strange beliefs, but they had less harm attached to them because they couldn't spread them.
Yes, now of course it's global.
Yes. And weaponized. And it's used particularly around the environment, about climate change, the abuse and the death threats that some of the people I know who are in climate activist groups, physical death threats to their families. You know,
well, they have actually death, of course. I mean, think of Rainbow Warrior.
Yes.
You know, Greenpeace's boat.
Yeah, but I know somebody. I know somebody who is currently receiving death threats for her children. People are threatening to shoot her children in the face
Yeah.
because she broke a bank window in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's just, you know, society breaking down and being steered by vested interests who have
Oh, yes.
no real interest in actually creating a safe society or creating a safe planet.
No, that's right. I mean, in fact, they are the ones who are stirring up and funding this problem.
Yeah,
No doubt.
absolutely.
And all because of personal greed.
It can only be that. I mean, I think that there are some people who actually think they could survive on a planet with just them on it.
Yes. Yes, no understanding of the interrelated
No, the web
situation.
of life and the interrelation of society. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we all depend on everybody else.
Yes, and it's not just about money. It's
Oh, no.
about sanity and love and friendship and reliance and people to pick you up when you're down or to do things that you can't do. That's society, not people who think I've got enough money, I don't need the rest of the world. I want this planet for my leisure.
Yes, exactly.
You're going to get I mean, the day that happens, their money means nothing.
No, that's right.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's, in fact, I mean, you know, society without money, which is really what we need to go towards, is so hard for so many people to understand.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
I think money is more addictive than any other substance. And if you look around at the way that people accrue it and hang on to it, but don't actually do anything with it.
Yes.
The mega rich in particular, you know.
Yeah.
They are wasting everything.
I'm reading a book at the moment about how through colonialism we've created a wealth-based value system, and as a result we actually made indigenous people no more than apes.
Yes.
And that is how we've justified extractivism, taking their resources, and we're still doing it in Africa.
Oh yes.
Yeah. The Niger Delta, the Niger Delta and so on. We're devastating pristine rainforests that we need for oil, when we should be leaving it in the ground, and it's not because we need it, it's because so that somebody can add extra zeros to their bank balance. They're never going to. They couldn't spend it if they had 50 lifetimes.
No.
Yeah. It's so yeah.
How
if we were to
how many cars does an individual need? You know, and hear about these people who've got 30 vehicles for personal use.
Yeah.
It is pure utter greed. That's all it is.
Yeah. It's well, if they lived in a small flat and you couldn't get in, and you're on the fire service list as a hoarder, you'd be a problem to society. But if you've got more cars than you could ever drive, and jets and houses, and all those things, that's not hoarding. That's to be aspired to.
That's the problem, isn't it? It is this aspiration that everybody must make as much money as they possibly can, regardless of the consequences. And that's the other consequences. I don't know about you, but I look at the way in which the world is run, the way in which leaders in particular behave, and I always get the impression that they have no concept at all of what the consequences of their decisions are.
Yeah.
That's just not part of their thought process.
Well, to be honest, my stance is that politics is broken.
Oh yes, very much.
And our vote doesn't count at all. And what actually, when they're talking about what they're planning to do, they're talking to their party funders.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like they give us a set menu. We've got a choice of 3 set menus. Nobody asks us what we need and what we want, and we have to vote for one of the 3. We generally write, it's either we do it because it's what we've always eaten, or the least insane.
Yes.
But it doesn't make any difference, because as soon as they're elected, they do the things they need to do for the funders.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's multinational funders and media
Oh, yeah.
funders and
Yes, yeah.
vested interests in
Yeah.
the petrochemical industries. So yes, so they're the people who are the ones that my character is drawn into. There, she was hiding. Her father was stepfather was hiding her.
Yes.
A bit like Rapunzel.
Yes, yes.
And she has to discover herself, and also she decides to join the resistance movement. One of the things that I liked in mine was that I actually celebrated the wisdom and the skills of older people.
Yes, yeah.
A large part of my resistance movement were older people, because we're invisible.
Yes, oh yeah, yes.
We're not counted.
Book as well. I mean, I've read it, as you know, and it's full of wonderful ideas and great situations and terrifying.
Yeah.
But so believable, you know, so credible.
I felt like I had to write it quick. I mean, it took me quite a long time, but I felt like I was, you know, like there's a terrier snapping at your heels. Have you ever been chased by a little dog?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, like that. And it was like the truth, you know, it was happening. And I was thinking, I'm going to get this written down before people say, I can say I've made this up, but it's already here, you know. Like,
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And one of the things, I don't know, I had a city that collapsed. Yes. And one of the things that happened first was that people stopped using public transport because they were infection spreaders.
Yes.
Well, and my book was published like 2 weeks before COVID. Damn. Yeah. So what's come true in your book then? Anything?
Mine's set on a small island, which actually exists. I bought an island from Kiribati, and it's a tiny island. It's 100 miles from everywhere. It's actually currently a wildlife sanctuary, because it was populated, but the people who lived there suffered a series of droughts in the 60s, and so they just abandoned it. So I thought it was a really useful place for me to have somebody shipwrecked on, because there was some sort of the remnants of civilization there. So there were shacks there that people could live in, and that there were food because the people had planted food crops on the island. You know, so I thought that this was going to be an ideal place to put them. But it's also an atoll, and like most of the Pacific atolls, it's the remnants of an old volcano, of course. So you've got a lagoon in the center, and then a fairly narrow and low-lying band around it with a couple of rocky outcrops, one at each end, sort of thing, of the ring. And of course, what happens is that they suffer a couple of fairly torrential monsoon-type thunderstorms, where, you know, real awful storms, and then suddenly realise that the actual level of the sea hasn't gone back down again afterwards. It's remained higher, which of course threatens their entire existence. And one of them, Appy, is an environmentalist. She's a very young, gifted child. Well, she was a gifted child. She's 20, I think, when the novel starts. Just about to have her 21st birthday, and she's already got a PhD. And she's been an environmentalist all her life, and she knows exactly what's going on. And she tells them, she said, what's happened here is one of two things. She said, either the Greenland ice cap has melted and it's slid off the land into the sea, or more likely, the Thwaites glacier at Antarctica has collapsed. And she said, my guess is it's a combination of the two. They have no way of finding out, of course, because though one of them has a satellite phone, of course, they have no way of charging it. So they have a couple of opportunities to send messages, and one of them sent the message. Unfortunately, they realised it was received because it's a corporate thing. It was received by somebody who's totally incompetent, who sent back a jokey answer.
Oh no. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And then all they can do is hope that something happens, because there's no way off this island. They can't build a raft or anything. And eventually a boat arrives, which when it first arrives looks as if it's damaged, seriously damaged. And the story then develops from that point. But I deliberately wanted to explore how belief can distort fact in a very important way, So what I did was I had a couple of religious groups involved with the 6 of them that are on the and they, of course, it gives the opportunity to chat and talk about what they believe in, as opposed to what is actually happening and what the reality of the world is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way in which I sort of approached it.
Yeah, fascinating. I think that one of the things that there's a misunderstanding of what theory is.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yes.
So,
Generally, it's become like I forgot the name of the thing. When people, it's just used as a story. It means this is what I think.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
As opposed to actual theory.
A lot of people,
and that gives it a kind of credibility.
Theory. Yeah. Yes.
When in fact it's made up.
Yes. Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
But if not by them, but somebody else, and they got a little buzz here when they read it because it made them feel good to read something that was that naughty. and then then they really believe it because it gave them that buzz. Because truth and fact often is not emotive.
Yes.
And takes some thinking about.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And we now with like fake, all the rest.
Yeah.
And denial and things.
Yes.
I'm trying to write something about climate grief.
Right.
This is in a different context. And inside climate, and you could have grief as a reaction to what's going on and feel hopeless.
Yes.
And you can feel angry about it and actually hate the messenger.
Yes.
And what they need to do is to step inside those and channel it, find a calm place, channel it, and use their energy to do something about it.
Absolutely.
Both denial or grief and anger are turned in or turned out, but not channeled into solving the problem.
No.
And it's easy to blame, the person on the street who's telling you about it.
Yes, exactly.
And not be angry at all with politicians and bankers and the media and the fossil fuel industry and all those things. And that's where the action has to happen. And we need to harness that energy and focus it there.
Yes.
And people will feel better in themselves if they stepped through those strong emotions. And that's also like climate change deniers, that they're actually, well, some people get a buzz out of being contrary.
Oh, yes.
But others, they just don't know what to do with the feelings. Yeah.
I think another drive, though, is personal fear. I think there are quite a lot of people around now who have heard enough for them to become frightened about the possibilities for the world, and because they feel they can't do anything about it, they then reject it because that's the only way they can actually face it. They can't live in that state of fear, so they have to say, no, it doesn't exist, it's not true. Because that sort of denial is quite common, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I think that concern about the climate emergency is about after the environment. No, after cost of living is the next biggest risk, and it's this Overton window. The Overton window. what is a reasonable political discourse. 3 years ago, climate change was a bit kooky.
Yeah.
And now everybody says it, but nobody does anything about it.
And those who do are often pilloried.
Yes.
Both by the public and by the press. I mean, Just Stop Oil.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're taking what is effectively a type of extreme action, but it's not really extreme, is it? In any
no. Throwing a jigsaw onto a tennis court is not. Is not. It's not seriously damaging.
But of course, because it interrupts something everybody's interested in, and it's their leisure, and they're looking at it and they're happy watching it, and so they don't want to be reminded at that stage of what actually is really important.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been a member of Greenpeace since it came to the UK in the 1980s, and so I've been constantly aware of what's going on. And you go back and see some of the stuff that was predicted.
Oh yes.
You said, yeah, it's happening. It's happening now. And in the, I think I forget the actual date. It was something like 1865.
Yeah.
Somebody who was working in the coal industry, a scientist, said, if we continue to burn coal at our current rate, we will very soon make the world uninhabitable through heat. And that was in 1865.
Yes. And if we'd done something then, the transition and our quality of life and our fuel security and everything else, the transition would have been unnoticeable.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But because we've left it now till, anyway, I've got on my, I'm endlessly reorganizing, finding boxes that's not been looked at for 15 years when I moved in the house. And I found a newspaper, an Observer special from 1990, saying, oh, we're running out of time now, saying climate change is here, this is an emergency, people have failed to act. And that was 30 years ago.
Yes, yeah.
And we've still done, I find it very difficult not to swear about things like this. We've done so little.
And we've now got a situation where our police forces worldwide are more concerned to stop protesters about the environment than they are to do the right thing, which is to do some to curb the environmental.
Well, there's a saying which is, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win.
Yeah.
And we have gone through being ignored.
Yeah.
How many petitions?
Oh,
what worth is a petition nowadays? It's just like a throwaway thing. You get a standard reply. They ignore you, then they laugh at you, and they've called climate protesters crusties, and all kinds of stuff like that, and they laugh at people. Then they fight you, and what we've now got is the state through the police fighting individuals. Like doctors and nurses and teachers and scientists and
old people with brains,
and old people who, and they've even made it illegal to walk slowly, or to make a noise. Now, you couldn't write that in a comedy sketch.
No,
but I mean, old people walk slow.
Well, exactly.
How slow is slow? Let's have a legal definition of slow. And
yes, exactly.
they've given them immense powers to the police, but actually at the moment they're not using them. They're using Section 12 of the Public Order Act. They've already got the tools. But the courts, we've actually got one High Court judge who jailed an elderly retired doctor because she stood outside the court with a sign saying climate change is real.
Yeah.
He imprisoned her for contempt of court because he won't allow it to be mentioned in his court. But she stood outside on the public pavement.
I mean, what sort of strange set of priorities is at work there? And this is entirely down to the very, very poor, as you said, very poor political situation. And then we've got like the bloke in charge of Shell at the moment saying that to transition more slowly. But
yes, they haven't transitioned at all.
Those billions that they have in renewables instead of oil, it would solve the problem fairly quickly. Would reduce it, let's put it that way. I think the solution is probably beyond us now. You know.
Well, 1.5 degrees was actually a declaration of failure.
Yes.
Because the United Nations, the COP, couldn't find a way to get to 0. But 1.5 degrees, the whole nation states will cease to exist. And large parts of the planet will cease to be inhabitable, or and we're seeing mass migration now, and resource wars. And people dying from. Have you heard of wet bulb temperatures?
No, I hadn't heard of that one.
That's when the heat and humidity both are so high that your body can't cool itself because it can't sweat. Because of the humidity, and fit and healthy people die within less than an hour. Children, babies, older people die much quicker, and that's happening around the world. And that's happening in the southern states of America. It's happening in India at the moment. I mean, what a horrible way to die. To cook.
Effectively, you're being
cook so that some CEO of a fossil fuel company can say our profit is more important.
Absolutely,
And that kind of attitude
about money being more addictive than any other substance. People are so fixed on possession of money and wealth, and it's just completely destroying the entire planet.
But it's destroying society as well, because it becomes the only measure. For quite a while now, we now worked in public sector, and
me too.
If it couldn't be counted, it was of no value. That came in. Actually, I think probably Tony Blair brought in that kind of. Well, probably as what? Yes, I'll try not.
I was in the unemployment at the time when she was Prime Minister, and it was awful.
Yes, but the thing is that there was whole culture there of we'll pull together. That we'll collaborate, and we're a team, and we've got this purpose. As soon as you've got bean counters, that's all that counts. And so they get rid of the things that aren't countable, and they were often the thing that actually held it together. Because nobody actually kind of knew it was there, and that kind of thing that's happened to society, and that's why we only measure things like possessions and money. But yes, so we've got 4 minutes left here. So I don't know quite how. I think we've covered quite a lot of the things.
Covered quite a lot of ground, but we could probably like this for the entire day, Linda.
We could, I think so, and more.
Singing from the same hymn sheet, and both clearly aware what the real problems are. It's just trying to get it across to the rest of the world.
Well, sometimes you can do it. Well, there's lots of different ways, but one way is actually through things that make people feel.
Emotions so important.
People can ignore facts. They can pretend they're not facts, but if you make them feel something, that's deeper, and they can't deny. I feel sad about that, or whatever. And that's one of the things I think that we both do through our writing.
Absolutely,
is actually bring people along and get them to see the world differently. Through engaging them emotionally.
Exactly.
Seeing things through a character that they care about's eyes. So I think that's probably a good wrap, don't you think?
I would agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is Linda Nicklin and Stuart Aken. Sorry. I tried that again.
Wait till I stop laughing. That's so daft. I do that. I forget my own voice, my own name.